भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 10, Departure of Lord Krishna for Dwaraka. Text 15. Text 15 does not have purport. I will read by myself. Mridanga Shankha Bhairyacha Veena Panavago Tunduriya Anaka Kantadhya Nedur Dundubhyastatha. Translation. While the Lord was departing from the palace of Hastinapura, different types of drums like the Mridanga, Dhola, Nagra, Dhunduri and Dundubi, and flutes of different types, the Veena, Gomukha and Bheri, all sounded together to show him honor. Text 16. Prasadha Shikhara Arhuda Prasada Shikhararhuda Prasada Shikhararhuda Kurunaryaha Didrikshya Kurunaryo Didrikshya Kurunaryo Didrikshya Vivrushuhu Kusumaihi Krishnam Vivrushuhu Kusumaihi Krishnam Vavrushuhu Kusumaihi Krishnam Vavrushuhu Kusumaihi Krishnam Prema Vrida Smita Ikshanaha Prema Vrida Smita Ikshanaha Prema Vrida Smita Ikshanaha Prasada Shikararudaha Kurunaryo Didrikshaya Vavrushuhu Kusumaihi Krishnam Prema Vrida Smitekshanaha Prasada Shikararudaha Kurunaryo Didrikshaya Vavrushuhu Kusumaihi Krishnam Prema Vrida Smitekshanaha Prasada Shikararudaha Kurunaryo Didrikshaya Vavrushuhu Kusumaihi Krishnam Prema Vrida Smitekshanaha. Kara, the roof. Arudaha, ascending. Kurunaryaha, the ladies of the Kuru royalty. Didrikshaya, seeing. Vavrushuhu, showered. Kusumaihi, by flowers. Krishnam, upon Lord Krishna, Prema, out of affection and love, Vrida Smite Ikshanaha, glancing with shy smiles. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charana Arvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Out of a loving desire to see the Lord, the royal ladies of the Kurus got up on top of the palace and smiling with affection and shyness, they showered flowers upon the Lord. Kindly repeat. Out of a loving desire to see the Lord, the royal ladies of the Kurus got up on top of the palace and smiling with affection and shyness, they showered flowers upon the Lord. Purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shyness is a particular extra-natural beauty of the fair sex and it commands respect from the opposite sex. This custom was observed even during the days of the Mahabharata, that is more than 5,000 years ago. It is only the less intelligent persons not well versed in the history of the world who say that observance of separation of female from male is an introduction of the Mohammedan period in India. This incident from the Mahabharata period proves definitely that the ladies of the palace observed strict parda, restricted association with men, and instead of coming down in the open air where the Lord Krishna and others were assembled, the ladies of the palace went up on top of the palace and from there paid their respects to Lord Krishna by showers of flowers. It is definitely stated here that the ladies were smiling there on top of the palace, checked by shyness. This shyness is a gift of nature to the fair sex and it enhances their beauty and prestige, even if they are of a less important family or even if they are less attractive. We have practical experience of this fact. A sweeper woman commanded the respect of many respectable gentlemen simply by manifesting a lady's shyness. Half-naked ladies in the street do not command any respect, but a shy sweeper's wife commands respects from all. Human civilization, as conceived by the sages of India, is to help one free himself from the clutches of illusion. The material beauty of a woman is an illusion because actually the body is made of earth, water, fire, air, etc. But because there is the association of the living spark with matter, it appears to be beautiful. No one is attracted by an earthen doll, even if it is most perfectly prepared to attract the attention of others. The dead body has no beauty because no one will accept the dead body of a so-called beautiful woman. Therefore, the conclusion is that the spirit spark is beautiful, and because of the soul's beauty, one is attracted by the beauty of the outward body. The Vedic wisdom therefore forbids us to be attracted by false beauty. But because we are now in the darkness of ignorance, the Vedic civilization allows very restricted mixing of women and man. They say that women is considered to be the fire and man is considered to be the butter. The butter must melt in association with fire and therefore they may be brought together only when it is necessary. And shyness is a check to the unrestricted mixing. It is nature's gift and it must be utilized. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschat Deshatarne Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, the royal ladies of the Kurus, when Krishna was about to leave the city of Hastinapur to Dwarka, these royal ladies of the Kurus, they had a loving desire to see the Lord. And out of that loving desire to see the Lord, they went on top of the palace. And with smiling and affection and shyness, with smiling, with affection and shyness, they showered flowers upon the Lord. And Prabhupada, in relation to this verse, is explaining about the nature of the women, the shyness, the nature of the women. So, the conduct of a person, either a man or women, how one should conduct themselves, how one should behave, is also taught in the Vedic literature. In the Vedic civilization, that was taught as a part of the education. So that's why Prabhupada many places says that in our Gurukula we should teach our children how to behave, how to conduct. And also, within the institution also Prabhupada taught how we should conduct, how we should behave, either in relation with each other or in relation with the opposite gender. And Prabhupada in the second paragraph explains that human civilization, as conceived by the sages of India, is to help one free from the clutches of illusion. So human civilization, the aim, the purpose of human civilization, Prabhupada is explaining, and that purpose was conceived by the sages of India in the olden days, in the Vedic era. Means the sages were living a life with a purpose, and they knew what is the purpose of life, of human life. And so Prabhupada says human civilization as conceived by the sages of India is to help one free from clutches of illusion. So human civilization is meant to help oneself and help others to free from the clutches of illusion, not to get bound. And the whole education system was also based on this. In the Vedic civilization, if you compare that Gurukul education of the Vedic ages with that of the modern education, actually there is no comparison. We cannot compare at all. Because modern education is completely about matter and sense gratification. That is, modern education binds one to the material life, material existence of suffering. But Vedic education aim is to liberate liberate a person from the cycle of birth and death. So that is the difference between modern education and Vedic education. Once when Prabhupada was in Bengal, probably Calcutta, one devotee will bring a minister, education minister, to meet with Prabhupada. So the devotee will bring education minister, and he recalls that incident. The Congress government was in power in West Bengal. I was very much interfacing with the VIPs, ministers and others. And the education minister, one Mr. Banerjee, I invited him to Mayapur. So Prabhupada was in Mayapur. I invited him to Mayapur when Prabhupada was there. I told Prabhupada just before I brought him in, I have brought the education minister of West Bengal and he is here. Can he come in and speak to you? So before bringing the minister directly in front of Prabhupada, he brings the minister to Mayapur and he comes and speaks with Prabhupada. Prabhupada brought the education minister. Can I bring him in? Prabhupada said, yes, bring him in. I escorted him in, and he gave his shrunk obeisances, and Prabhupada bade him to sit down in front of his desk there in his room. So the minister will come and he will pay obeisance to Prabhupada in a kind of way, in his own way. And Prabhupada will ask him to sit in front of his desk. Then I said, Srila Prabhupada, this is the Honorable Minister of Education of West Bengal. We'll introduce him to Prabhupada. This is the Honorable Minister of Education for West Bengal. Then the man looked at Prabhupada, and then Prabhupada just looked at him and said nothing to the point where I flinched. Prabhupada will not react in any way. He is telling, he is the Minister of Education. You will be feeling so much of honor that I have brought education minister to meet with Prabhupada. But Prabhupada is not reacting in any surprising or in any way. So he is a little flinched about that. I was embarrassed. I thought maybe he didn't hear me. So he will again insist to Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, this is the education minister of Bengal. He will stress on that point. Prabhupada is education minister. And then Prabhupada looked at the man and he said, that is not education. So Prabhupada directly tells on the face of the education minister, that is not education. I almost died. Then Prabhupada fell silent again, and then a few words were said. Then it is all over. I took him out. Prabhupada, of course, gave a couple of qualifying sentences to say what is real education is, understanding the difference between the body or matter and the soul, and explained a little to the fellow that this education should also be distributed. So education means to educate about the body, matter and the soul also. And Prabhupada stressed that to the education minister, that this education also should be distributed. So in real sense, Prabhupada did not have considered the modern education as education at all. Prabhupada also said one small story that a scholar or a professor kind of person who is well versed in many subjects. He'll be traveling he'll be traveling from one village to another or one place to another, and on the way he will have to cross a river. So that scholar will take a boat to cross the river, and on the way while crossing the river, the boatman and the scholar will be sitting, and the boatman will be rowing the boat and crossing the river. And this scholar, in a kind of exhibiting his scholarship, will just start putting some questions to the boatman. Because he is well versed in so many other subject matter, he'll just take up different subjects and he will ask the question to the boatman, do you know about this subject? And the boatman, of course, he will not be so educated like the scholar, and he will say, no, I don't know about it. So first he will speak about some botany or something, and he will say, you know about this? The boatman will say, I don't know about it. Then the scholar will say, your life is 25% waste. Then he will speak about one more subject, and he will ask the boatman, do you know about this at least? This is a very common, everyone must be knowing about this. The boatman says, I don't know about it. Oh, your life is 50% waste. Then again, like that, one more subject matter he will speak, and he will ask, do you know about this at least? The boatman as usual says, no, I don't know about this also. Your life is 75% waste. Then suddenly there will be huge wind, and the boat will be too much turmoiled with the waves of the river, and it will start about to sink. Then the boatman will ask, do you know swimming? The scholar will say, no, I don't know swimming, I didn't learn swimming, I was busy with all this education, learning and all those things. Shri Shri Radha Govind ki jai. I don't know swimming. Then the boatman will say, then your life is 100% waste. Saying this, the boatman will jump into the river, he will swim and he will reach the shore. And the scholar will drown and give up his life. So, the point is here, the whole education system, without understanding about our own self, about the Creator, about the Supreme Controller, about our relation with that Supreme Controller, about the material nature, about our relation with material nature. Nothing about this and just about matter is waste. Just like the scholar knew everything, so many subjects he knew, but he didn't know how to cross the river, how to swim and cross the river, because of which he has to give up his life. In the same way, in material also, so many education in the modern civilization, so many subject matters are there to learn in the education field, but there is no education to teach us how to cross the ocean of material existence, how to cross or how to get out of the cycle of birth and death. There is no education on this. So it is exactly like that scholar who will have to give up his life within no time. And also it is stated in the Bhagavad, in the Shastras, Shramayeva hi kevalam. It is simply a waste of time. So the whole education system is based on matter. Even when we see the medical science, if a person takes to the medical science, MBBS course, right from the beginning to end, there is only teaching about anatomy of the human system. It's a medical science, but there is no mention about the energy within the body which is making the body move. There is no mention of that, there is no education of that. Only the matter, only the anatomy of the human body is been described. But in Ayurveda, if you see, whoever takes to Ayurvedic studies, first there is mention of the soul in Ayurveda. They also teach us some of the verses from Bhagavad Gita also. And then they start with the actual Ayurveda. So there is education about the soul also in that. But of course in the current status, even that will be dissolved. People will not know about that also. The professors who is teaching, they themselves will not be so much well versed in that matter. So it is very much important for us to educate. In the modern scenario, the parents, the guardians should take to the responsibility of giving this knowledge to the children along with whatever material education they give. Just making the children read books and become an engineer, become a professor, become a doctor, yes, but along with that they should know what is the purpose of life, without which it will be just like the scholar who drowns in the river without knowing to swim the river. In Bhagavad Gita also, there are so many concepts of knowledge given by the Lord. Especially in the 13th chapter, if you see, the Lord is speaking here about nature, material nature, and the enjoyer. The title of the chapter is only Nature, the Enjoyer and the Consciousness. So here an education is there about the nature, about the enjoyer. Enjoyer means there are two kinds of enjoyer. One is the Jiva and also the Paramatma. The Lord is educating here about both. Enjoyer as Jiva as the enjoyer and the Paramatma as the supreme enjoyer. So, in one of the verse, when the Lord explains about the soul, about the super soul, and about the material nature, the Lord gives the Falashruti by saying in the 25th verse, that super soul is perceived. One who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interaction of the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. So here the Lord is saying, one who concerning material nature, one is material nature, the living entity, the soul, and the interaction of the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. So there is a knowledge about soul, material nature, and also about the super soul. And one who understands this is sure to attain liberation. Not that only by material nature understanding one is sure to obtain liberation. Because attaining only knowledge about the matter, material, is not complete education. It is a incomplete. It's not complete knowledge. So here the Lord is giving the knowledge of complete knowledge. The Lord could have just said about the soul, but the Lord is completely explaining even about the material nature. If you see 13th chapter onwards, it is all about the material nature, the modes of nature. In the 14th chapter, the Lord explains about the three modes of material nature. So after this verse, the Lord says, that super soul is perceived by some through meditation, by some through cultivation of knowledge, and by others through working without fruitive desires. So the super soul can be perceived by three methods: by meditation, by cultivation of knowledge, or fruitive desires, working without fruitive desires, that is karma yoga. And in the next verse, the Lord says, again there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about Him from others. But there are some others who are not conversant in the spiritual knowledge. They are not sure, or they do not have knowledge about spirituality. But they also begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about Him. So the Lord is stressing here about the point, hearing. Even in the verse it is said, Shrutva anyebhya upasate. By hearing, they start worshipping. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death. And of course, the education means to hear from the teacher. So Prabhupada says in this verse, purport, this verse is particularly applicable to modern society because in modern society there is practically no education in spiritual matters. Because the Lord is saying, by hearing one will come to this position of Supreme Person. But in the modern education, there is practically no education about spiritual matters. Some of the people may appear to be atheistic or agnostic or philosophical, but actually there is no knowledge of philosophy. As for the common man, if he is a good soul, then there is a chance for advancement by hearing. Hearing process, just by hearing, one can attain material knowledge or even the spiritual knowledge, but that in that hearing process in the modern education system, there is no subject matter about the soul. So Prabhupada is mentioning that here, that there is practically no education in spiritual matters. Lord Chaitanya, who preached Krishna consciousness in the modern world, gave great stress to hearing, because if a common man simply hears from authoritative sources, he can progress, especially according to Lord Chaitanya. If he hears the transcendental vibration, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So Prabhupada is telling Lord Chaitanya also stressed on this point of hearing. And Prabhupada also quotes from the verse, it is stated therefore that all men should take advantage of hearing from realized souls and gradually become able to understand everything. The worship of the Supreme Lord will then undoubtedly take place. Lord Chaitanya has said that in this age no one needs to change his position. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, quoting a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Sthane sthita shrutigata tanuvan manobhir. Sthane sthita. No need to change the position in any way. It is not possible to change the position also. Because the whole system is so deteriorated that we alone cannot go in a different direction. But still, staying in the position without changing his position, but one should give up the endeavor to understand the absolute truth by speculative reasoning. We should not try to understand the absolute truth by speculative reasoning. One should learn to become the servant of those who are in knowledge of the Supreme Lord. We should try to become the servant of those who are in knowledge of the Supreme Lord. How? By hearing to them. So this hearing process is most important. So either it is material or spiritual. One can get knowledge by hearing. And that hearing process is already there. The children in the schools, they are already educated about matter, material things by hearing from the teachers. So through the same process, we should also add this one subject to make them more educated about spiritual aspects. Which Prabhupada also told to that minister that this also should be distributed along with the matter, whatever you are teaching in the schools. One should learn to become the servant of those who are in knowledge of the Supreme Lord. If one is fortunate enough to take shelter of a pure devotee, hear from him about self-realization and follow in his footsteps, he will gradually elevate it to the position of a pure devotee. So by hearing from a pure devotee about self-realization about God and following his footsteps, he will gradually elevate it to the position of a pure devotee. In this verse particularly, the process of hearing is strongly recommended and is very appropriate. Although the common man is often not as capable as so-called philosophers, faithful hearing from an authoritative person will help one transcend this material existence and go back to Godhead, back to home. So beautifully Prabhupada is explaining. So the complete knowledge, the education system will become complete only when there is knowledge about spirit is added. Spiritual knowledge is also given to the human society, without which it is not education at all, as per what Prabhupada says. So in this verse, Prabhupada, especially in the purport, make us understand how the material beauty of just the knowledge about the matter is not all in all. And one more point, the dead body has no beauty because no one will accept the dead body of a so-called beautiful woman. Therefore, the conclusion is that the spirit spark is beautiful, and because of the soul's beauty, one is attracted by the beauty of the outward body. Just like a child is born, the moment the child is born, the relatives around, the people around will start relating with the child. Oh, this is my son, this is my grandson, this is my nephew, this is my niece. They start relating with the child. But suppose if a child is born and the child is dead, will anyone relate? Oh, this is my son, this is my grandson. Will anyone relate? No one will relate. They will just say the child is dead. And that's the end of all those relations with the child. So actually, what is that relation that making existing with the child? It's the soul. If the soul is present in the child, then all those relations exist. If there is no soul in the child, then all relation is lost. Immediately. So, but nobody will recognize that. Nobody will recognize that this child is related to me. Through body they will recognize. But as a soul, what is my relation with this child? Nobody will realize. What is the relation between the soul and a soul? What is the relation between one soul and another soul? There is no direct relation between the soul and the soul. There exists a relation, but there is no direct relation between the soul and the soul. A soul is related with another soul in relation with Krishna. Each and every soul is Amsha of Krishna. Each and every soul is servant of Krishna. So, our relation between one soul and another soul exists in relation with Krishna. The center of that relation is Krishna. But as such, a soul and a soul is not directly related. Any relation that exists is through Krishna. So even in our life, we should adopt this. Our relation with any person is through Krishna. No, there is no direct relation. Because we are not this body. Even if we consider it as a body, it's just a duty. In bodily relation, it's a duty that should be performed. But we should be always conscious about our real existence. We are not this body, we are spirit, soul. We are servants of Krishna. And our relation between each other exists in relation with Krishna, not independently. When we live in that consciousness, then that makes our life perfect. So we should hear more and more about these from the pages of Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam of Prabhupada. When we hear from the pure devotee, the knowledge, the realization will increase. We'll stop here. Any questions? ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय.